Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed your comfort break. I'll be taking you through the grant agreement, the due diligence, and the contracting process. I think we've had a lot of GMSing and ABC pimping today. So let's start with my favorite section, the contracting. Next slide, please, Kagiso. So as you've seen from the section that Alden and Dumasani took you through, we conducted due diligence. So the due diligence checklist is available on the downloads on the GMS, and applicants are required to respond to all due diligence questions and upload all the required documentation. The standardized grant agreement has also been provided and are accessible on the website. Something that you must note is that the standard terms and conditions contained in Annex 1 to the grant agreement are non-negotiable, that approved applicants will be required to contract on Annex 1 as it is. This is very important, so I'll repeat it, that the standard terms and conditions contained in Annex 1 to the grant agreement are non-negotiable. Thus, approved applicants will be required to contract on Annex 1 as it is. So what do we request for you on the due diligence? First of all, the details of the applicant. So who are the contracting parties? So what type of organization is it? Is it an NPO? Is it a government organization? Is it a private company? We ask you to submit your personal information for us to enable us to conduct FICA checks. So you also see.
Hi. People are saying that you're a bit faint. Can you get closer to your microphone, please?
I'm sitting next to it, Najra. Is it better now? It's 100%.
It's still a bit faint. I think the best we can do is probably a signal that is weak. If people could just turn up the volume on the listening devices, please. Thank you.
If the sound is not getting better, Elena, I can take over from you.
Just give me a second. Let's see if it's better now.
Okay, we've lost Elena.
I'm taking over, so I'm going to go to the next section, which is the due diligence. In that section, what we will require is the details of the applicant, the contracting parties. What we'll need is the type of organization, the personal information to enable us with a FICA background checks, tax compliance verification report not older than 30 days, the audited financial statements of last past 3 years. So as mentioned earlier by Eve and Alden, in a case where your financial year ends in the middle of this period, we will accept the previous 2 years plus the management account statements for the current financial year. Then there's the institutional and partnership arrangements. That is any partnership arrangement or project organograms that will be form part of this project. We will also need the CVs of the key individuals. That is very important to check for the capabilities of the people who's going to implement on our behalf. Another issue that comes up a lot is the terms of reference of the partnership and the steering committee. We will need to have sight of those to ascertain ourselves that the corporate governance is in place. May we please go to the next slide? So in terms of the governance and controls, the governance structures in terms on and a reference is important. We're going to look at your risk policy that needs to be uploaded, your financial management policy, IT management policies, procurement, and then very important, your POPI compliance. So in terms of POPIA, what we will require you is to upload your policy and your procedures to protect personal information. As you could have seen from the M&E section, this information is very important to us in terms of verifying the evidence. So I'm just going to stand still on this aspect for a short moment and just explain in terms of organizations where there will be international organizations coming on board as providing you with match funding, or any of those cases, it is important for you to make sure that the international partner that you're going to partner with does not provide issues in terms of our POPIA requirements. We are going to contract in terms of South African legislation, and the onus is on the JF partner to ensure that this information will be made available in a case where there is an international hand as well. Then in terms of our project model and project funding model, the selection criteria to identify the youth beneficiaries, the flow of fund diagrams, the signed match funding agreements from the non-public sectors, as well as your board resolutions is very important. And prospective partners, I'm going to stand still at this aspect as well. The board resolution is very important to us because that is where we will see that you do have the mandate to act on behalf of your organization, and that all those aspects are in place. So we also need the proof of the appropriate funds for the project, which was being an unencumbered format. That will bring us then to the next point, which is monitoring and evaluation. We will require the monitoring and reporting system that you're going to be used, the templates of the means of verifications for each indicator, as well as to nominate a project-specific indicator with the targets and the appropriate means of verification. Helena, you can go over to the next section, please.
Helena is back. Agnes, if you needed to take over.
I see that Helena still needs to be made the co-host. Helena, I'm going to proceed. If you can come in, you are welcome to join at any time, at which point I will hand over to you. So in terms of the legal requirements, we will need the CIPC registration documents, where it's applicable, the shareholders agreement, the trust deed, the deed authorization letters, and in a case of an NPC, the registration certificates, as well as all other material contracts, regulatory approvals, proof of appointment of your auditors, and in a case of a trust, the board resolution or trust resolution that gives us authority to do credit checks as well. In terms of litigation and contingent liabilities, judgment against the applicant we need to see that there is no judgment for at least the past 2 years, that the credit-related judgments against the directors does not exist, and that there is no contingent liabilities or pending litigation or any outstanding non-compliance issues in terms of compliance to the laws of the Republic of South Africa.
Thank you, Harris. I hope everyone can hear me now.
You are clear. Thank you, Elena.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the assistance. Now we're just going to give you a brief overview of the grant agreement clauses. Very importantly to note that we've got the grant match funding framework. The principle is that match funding must be deposited before the grant disbursement will be processed. The next thing that I want to talk about is the Section 38 undertaking. This is in terms of the Public Finance Management Act. This requires that the applicant will undertake to implement effective, efficient, and transparent financial management, risk management, and internal control systems as required in Section 38 of the PFMA. And this undertaking must be provided before the transfer of funds occur. The next clause that we need to talk about is the project indicators. You've heard about Kath and Funde talking about the indicators. This means the indicators used by the Jobs Fund to evaluate the performance of the project, and the indicators are set out in the term sheet that is available on the website and which Lerato has shared as well. Then the next thing is the ring-fence project bank accounts. Eve spoke about it earlier. This means the primary project bank account to be opened by the applicant exclusively for purposes of the project, into which the grant and match funding must be deposited and from which all transactions related to the project must be operated. Then disbursements, you've heard about disbursements. First of all, advance disbursement. This means the first disbursement to the applicant once the applicant has fulfilled all the stipulated conditions precedent and conditions of the grant advance of the signature of the grant agreement. The quarterly disbursement, that is the quarterly request by the applicant detailing the basis for such request, and this is subject to the applicant meeting all the subsequent quarterly disbursement conditions as outlined in the grant agreement, as well as the submission of a valid tax clearance report, as well as proof that the requisite match funding has been submitted. Then withholding of funds. This is a process that's outlined in Annexure 1 to the grant agreement. This is where funds will be withheld in the case where there's project failure. And this refers to instances where the project has failed within a reasonable time to deliver the desired or the contracted outputs, or in the case of non-compliance, or there's implementation problems, which constitutes a material variance of the project model and or an event of default. Then reimbursement of project funds. That is where an audit of the project bank account provides evidence that a disbursement has been wrongfully used, or that it has been committed to be used for purposes other than the intended and which are not consistent with the project ABC PIMP or the grant agreement. The Jobs Fund, after a thorough investigation, may request the applicant to reimburse to the Jobs Fund any disbursed amount that was misused. Next slide, please. Then the reporting obligations. We spoke about the quarterly report. This must be submitted to the Jobs Fund in the required format via the GMS, the Grant Management System, after the end of each quarter, which actual day will publish quarterly on the GMS. Together with that, the project ABC PIMP must be updated with detailed actual progress against the project's activities, outputs, and outcome indicators for the quarter, as well as the stamped coded bank account statements, and 100% Tier 1 and Tier 2 supporting documentation evidencing progress against the program and the project-specific indicators. Then the audit report. This is where the project financials and performance audit reports will be submitted to the Jobs Fund on an annual basis. The self-evaluation report is what the applicant must develop and submit to the Jobs Fund in a draft format before the project's completion date. Another type of report is also a summative evaluation report. That's an independent assessment carried out immediately after the project completion date to determine the value of a project. Halfway through the project, a midterm evaluation report will be submitted, and this is also an independent assessment, and this is to analyze whether the project is on track, identify any problems and challenges the project is encountering, and what corrective actions are required. Then assets purchased by the project funds. This is where assets are acquired using the project's funds to implement the project. Termination. This is usually 1 year after the project's implementation period, or any other date that the parties may agree upon themselves, where the project should be terminated, or any other date that the Jobs Fund's Investment Committee may determine or stipulate that it must be terminated. Then the dispute resolution process that we will follow if any dispute arises out of or in connection, with a grant agreement or related thereto. The parties must refer the dispute firstly to negotiation, and in the event of that failing to mediation, and in the event of that failing to arbitration. The key personnel, Dinisani also spoke about them earlier, so that will be the people responsible for implementing the project. It could be the project manager, the person responsible for collecting and collating the evidence, the person responsible for the finances, and also the person responsible for reporting on a quarterly basis. Then the POPI undertaking, it's very important to note that the parties, both the Jobs Fund and the applicant, agree to keep all confidential information confidential and to utilize it for the intended purpose and in accordance with the provisions of POPI. The Jobs Fund reserves the right to publish information on the lessons learned from the project. However, the Jobs Fund shall comply with its privacy policy and the provisions of POPI when publishing information on lessons learned from the project. We will also request that the applicant sign an annexure to the grant agreement, and that will refer mainly to the 8 lawful conditions of lawful processing personal information. Next slide, please. Then after your application has been approved by the investment committee, the applicants will either be informed whether they've been successful or not. Then a draft agreement and the ABC PIMP of the successful applicants will be finalized internally. The contracting documents, that is now the grant agreement, the ABC PIMP, and annexures will be sent to successful applicants for their final commentary. They will then return it to the project team. The project team will update the draft agreement and the annexures. The updated grant agreement, ABC PIMP, and annexures will be finally checked by the Jobs Fund, and then it will be submitted with the draft agreements with the contracting file to RDGG for a final approval, and then the execution of the grant agreement should not take longer than 30 calendar days after approval by the investment committee. At this moment, I'm going to stop. Is there any questions? I couldn't check the chat now that we need to address hardness.
Elena, I think most of the questions are covered. It was just a questions in the interim to say by when will we start disbursement. So you can just deal with that one. So our process from now on is the application round is going to end, and then we're going to start with the assessment, whereafter the process of informing the successful applicants will start, and then towards the end of this the year, not the financial year, we will then have the contract signed, so that will be finalized before we go on leave in December, and disbursement should start shortly thereafter.
Thank you, Hannes. Just if everyone has not perhaps read the chat, that we would like to finalize the contracting obviously before the 21st of December 2022. Any other questions? I don't see any further questions. Then at this stage, I would hand over to my colleague Hilton, that's going to discuss the post-training support provided by the Jobs Fund. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Helena. I hope I'm audible enough. Alex, if I'm not, please let me know. So I think we're reaching at the end of our session today. It's been very interactive. My bet is to talk about post-training support. I think a few questions have been raised earlier on how can the Jobs Fund assist during this application process. There will be a lot of interaction between our appraisers and the applicants, but there are certain limitations around that. The JF team will assist the applicants during the appraisal, but you need to note the following. We will not complete the application documents for the applicant. What we'll do is support and provide structure and guidance upon request. The applicant must draft and engage the project team for assistance if support is required. And when support is required around the ABC PIMP and all uploads on the submission of the application, we're here to assist. At the close of the application, we will prioritize projects based on their competitiveness around the ABC PIMP, completeness of the due diligence documents, and firmness of mid funding. I think we just need to really take note of this, because this is where the competition is won and lost. If you don't take time to make sure that your theory of change is really clear, succinct, and impactful around the required documents such as ADC, PIMP, your due diligence, and match funding. No matter how great your concept may be, you may just lose the race. We will communicate the due diligence meetings when we get to that point. We just need you to note that during appraisal period, there are key deliverable dates which can't be missed, as this will result in delays in the approval of your project. And we don't want you to miss the opportunity to get the guidance that we provide. Please note, and this is critically important, no matter how intimately you engage with the JF team, it does not guarantee that your project would be approved. Approval of the project is beyond the hands of the Jobs Fund team. What the Jobs Fund team does is recommend projects, having assessed the project and the impact that they're looking for, and make a recommendation to the various committee. The final deciding committee is the JFIC. The JFIC would decide on whether a project can be approved for funding or not based on our recommendation. Our recommendation does not guarantee approval from the JFIC. However, we'll do our best to assist the applicants where possible. Make sure, please, that you don't just fill in skinny documents and then contact the Jobs Fund and say, please give us guidance to complete this. I mean, we would need to see that there's an exhibit of hard work that would have been done, and our assistance is really about structuring and guidance on how to make the project stronger for a possible approval by the IC. I think that's, in short, the support that we'll give post this training. And if there are any questions regarding that bit. I don't see questions that relate to this. I'm going to, at this stage, hand over to the DDG for a final words of closure for this training period. But thank you very much from my side for being with us the whole day. I understand that's a lot of information to take in and a lot to think about post this. Thank you. Over to you, DDG.
Thank you very much, Hilton, and thank you very much to everybody that has participated. It's been a very, very long day, and I'm especially grateful for all the questions that have been posted, because by way of you posting your questions, you are assisting us to ensure that everybody understands the detail, and so I'm very grateful for all the questions that have come through. I hope that your questions have been answered. There's been many questions around extending the deadline. So we do appreciate that the deadlines are really tight, but we also we work within a public finance framework. And so funding is available for a particular period of time. And that is the reason why, you know, we are expecting that the submissions must be made timeously, and that is why you have such a short period. I think it's about 6 or 7 weeks from the opening of the funding round to complete your applications. I can only appeal to all of you to, when you do submit your application, to include all the documentation that is asked for. This is a competitive process, and that is why, you know, we've almost kind of, you know, the application form is a very detailed template, so we can compare across the different applications, you know, instead of having to compare apples with pears or oranges. We try to compare apple with apple, and when I say that, it means that, you know, we see and we assess how different projects have responded to the questions that we've asked. Somebody had asked here, I just saw, yeah, so Eve has answered Percy. Percy, you don't have to pay back the grant, okay? We just want you to bring your matched funding to the party, so we can share risk with you and co-invest. So take the time now to begin to complete your application form. I can assure you we've done this. This is our 10th funding round. And at 2:30 on the closing date, we will have frantic calls from people to say, I'm halfway there. I still have to upload 2 or 3 documents, but you know, this is not working for me, or the GMS is not working. We've got all kinds of intelligence happening at the back of the system to actually be able to assess how far you really are in submitting your application. We don't want to miss any good applications, any competitive applications. The challenge before us as South Africans is real. Creating jobs in these trying circumstances is a major challenge. And so we look forward to receiving quality applications from yourselves. We look forward to seeing the innovation that you would apply in trying to solve for this job crisis that we have in South Africa. So please don't leave it to the last. Do yourselves a favor, start completing the application form now. Now and then we go in and we check in on how far people are with their applications. And if we see that something perhaps untoward, somebody will call you. But if you don't do that, you know, you can't have the additional assistance that we might possibly give you. So all that is left for me to say is thank you very much. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for participating, for hanging in there. You know, if your resilience in respect of your participation today is anything to go by, then I truly believe that you're going to make this a very, very competitive funding round for us. And in that, we will all then work together and contribute to addressing this.
Our colleagues, I think Najo has lost connectivity. Let me just check if she's joining in. Just 1 second, colleagues, and then we can just give an opportunity to close. Okay, so I'm just checking if she is joined in. Okay, colleagues, Najwa has not joined back. I think, yes, she has indicated, we really thank everyone for the participation. And I think the emphasis was really to say, let's get going, let's work together. And as you need guidance from us, please call on us. But the key thing is that you need to start the application process now. 28th March is fast approaching. Before you know it, it will be a day or two. So please don't leave anything to the last moment. Based on that, colleagues, thank you very much, and I wish you the best in the application process. Thank you.